Quinn Ewers said, what?
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Georgia Bulldogs football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Jarvis Davis and Brian Gebhardt. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Now that the playoffs are done, the sports have stopped sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. The Atlanta Football Party is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, the Dogs, they did some good work on the recruiting trail in June, but can they start July off with a bang? And speaking of June, the Dogs added one more recruit since we last spoke. But let's talk about a conference that has accounted for 4 of the last 5 natties, but the new kid on the block thinks they are them. So Texas and Oklahoma officially joined the SEC Monday, of course. And according to Texas QB Quinn Ewers, they have a target on their back. His quote to On 3, "We're going to be everybody's biggest game for sure." He said that at the Manning Passing Academy recently. It's definitely a different level. I've always wanted to play in the SEC. I know we're all excited to be a part of a conference like that. Now, guys, he qualified that first statement a little bit, but Jarvis, should Texas really act like they're the team with the target on their backs in the SEC?
No disrespect to Quinn Ewers. About to get ready to be a projected top 10 pick and a quarterback in the NFL. And obviously, you have to be very smart to be projected to be a quarterback because so much information you have to process and all that stuff. But this is dumb. This is the dumbest statement I've ever heard in the 2024 summer, right? I think he takes the award right now. Like, can we have the award show for the dumbest statement ever made? Because we're talking about a team that had to pay their way to get out of a conference that's going to be irrelevant in the next 5 years. And then you're talking about a conference, a team that was in the college football playoff last year that act like they don't even know. They were playing some coverages last year against the Washington Huskies. It's cover nobody. That was the actual coverage.
Never got to cover 0, right?
We'll cover none. We'll cover none.
Yeah. They look awful. I'm like on defense. I'm just like, what? Like, how did this team make the playoffs, right? We're sitting up here saying, like, okay, Florida State got taken out. I kind of understand that. But, it just further confirmed how much of a farce this best 4 teams was last year. And here we have the quarterback coming up here saying, oh, we're going to have a big old target on our back. No, you're going to have a big old clown face on your face because once you understand that, hey, you're in the SEC now. You're in here with the big dogs, meaning the Bulldogs, meaning the best team in the country, meaning the best coach in the country. So, yeah, y'all playing catch up, man. Worry about doggone Arch Manning taking your spot if you get hurt this year. How about that?
all of what Jarvis said, right?
What Jarvis
said. You got to beat the guy. And yeah, they were in the playoff, and Georgia wasn't. But this is Georgia's conference until you take this thing over or try to take this thing over. And it is one of those things where good for Texas that they're coming in right now because the program is hot. They finally are back to a spot where they're playing really good football, and they are one of the better teams in the league. But they are talking and approaching the season as though they've already accomplished the biggest thing. And they haven't been able to do that. And not only that is that head coach that beat you in that semifinal game, he's going to be in the SEC as well. So you've got that. You got to beat him too. Not only do you got to find a way to beat Kirby, and then it's all this talk about we're going to be, the biggest game for everybody. And I'm, all right, you take a look at the SEC schedules, and every SEC team for the most part has a big one. And you look at Texas, and they certainly have some big games on the schedule, right? Week 2 at Michigan, that's going to be huge. That's a massive national game. And the way that they're talking, they better win that thing, especially with Harbaugh gone and McCarthy and all those guys gone up there in Ann Arbor. But you look around, and outside of Michigan and Georgia, this is a very, very, very easy SEC schedule to me. Like, you start to go through it, and just to rip off, so it goes, it's Colorado State, and then it's at Michigan, right? And then after that, it's UTSA, it's UL Monroe, it's Mississippi State, all of those games outside of Michigan are at home too. So you're starting off with one of those like old school. Like, are you sure you're not in the Big 12 to start off the first 5 weeks and then you're joining the SEC July 1st? But it doesn't look like it happens until October 1st this year to me. So Texas, you got to step up before you can talk all this ish, you know?
Yeah, it's so interesting to me because, of course, Oklahoma, and understandably so, is a little bit quieter because, like you said, Brian, as Texas is coming into the SEC, at least they're coming in with momentum. They're coming in with good recruiting classes. They're coming in having been a part of the college football playoff last year. So, yeah, and even, down to expanding it beyond football, you were able to snag the Texas A&M head baseball coach, right? So, yeah, you're doing some special things over there. But here's the thing. You did special things over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you do special things over here, then we can have a conversation. Because in order for you to get to where you got, granted, you did beat Alabama, so we give you credit for that. But you never had to run through Georgia to get there. See, that's still the thing. You never had to go through Georgia to get there. So now that we're at a point in place where divisions are gone, so it won't be, hey, Texas can come out of the West, if you will, and Georgia can come out of the East, and then they can kind of duke it out. It's not that kind of situation anymore. Like we're beyond that. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But I just think ultimately, I don't think you poke the bear. Like, I don't think you give the Dogs any more bulletin board material than they already have. And we know that Kirby Smart is absolutely a genius in finding ways to motivate his team. That's what he does, right? That's what he does. So for me, I think that was the difficulty in kind of seeing this like, ooh, this is not the place or the time where you want to have this conversation because unfortunately, like I said, there was all the other stuff about, hey, I know we're all excited to be a part of the conference, but nobody heard that. That's not what's going to go on the billboard or the bulletin board in Athens, right?
Yeah.
What's on the bulletin board in Athens? We're going to be everybody's biggest game for sure. Now, switching gears, Carson Beck, who is also at the Manning Passing Academy, had some words too. Coach Smart says this too, but we don't get hunted. We do the hunting. That's what Beck said when asked about a daunting Bulldog schedule that includes road trips to Kentucky, Alabama, Texas, and Ole Miss. So, Brian, how do you like Beck basically saying it's not about a target on their backs for the Dogs, but who they actually target?
No, 100%. And it's funny because you mentioned the road trips, right? And the away games, but it's like Clemson's even dismissed from that schedule too, in terms of when you mention some of the big games. And I know that's not technically a road game. I don't even know who's technically home, even though it's close enough for both in that spot. But yeah, that's been the mentality for Georgia for a long time. I mean, 3-4 years now in terms of we're the team to beat. You got to come out us with your best. So we're going to set up a plan to where we go at you. We're not just going to sit back and wait and make this thing happen. And Kirby's been awesome about that, trying to continue to find ways to take this thing to the next level and find ways to get better and get different and continue to adapt and bringing in different coaches and all that type of thing. So that certainly is the mentality. And I think that approach too sets up perfectly with this schedule because it's like, all right, Clemson, then you got kind of a couple weeks and then it's another big night game and it's a bye week. And then you're going to Alabama and it's spaced out in this way where it's like, okay, every 2 or 3 weeks, there's this target of getting ready for this game. Now I know Kirby will be focused on, Tennessee Tech or the task at hand in week 2 or week 3 or whatever, whatever nonsense he's got to spew in those couple weeks, like that's got to happen. Right. But I think having those targeted goals every couple weeks where sometimes that hasn't happened in years past with Georgia. Sometimes you look at the schedule and it's like, all right, we'll find out what this team's about, middle of November, or the second week in October, so, and I think we'll find out more about this team right away. And if they are going to be the hunters again.
Yeah.
And I think, this is so interesting, right? It just amazes me how, teams continue to give teams like the Georgia Bulldogs this type of fodder, right? Like this is just perfect. It's perfect for Kirby because we're like, hey, they the big dogs now. they're the team to beat in the SEC. They don't want to have their own the Longhorn network that's now pretty much defunct because of they coming into the big dogs, right? Like they got to start putting up. It was so funny. I was reading, talking about how they're gonna how things are gonna change for the Longhorn Network. They were saying how, oh yeah, this is part of our big addition to our communication department, and the kids are gonna be able to put up original content. And I was like, yeah, I bet they are. You know what's the other content that's not gonna be on there? Those games. Because y'all gotta come over here to the big dogs, where the big dogs live, right? So I think it's just so funny for them to have him say something like that. I'm sure Steve Sarkisian is just like, hey man, shut up.
Yeah.
I used to coach in this conference, so I know what I'm getting myself into. You ain't heard nothing about Sark coming out here saying anything about what this competition is and what we about to get ready to do. So yeah, man. Quinn, you need to follow in your coach leadership, my friend.
We're like a Lane Kiffin comment away and like a Brock Vandagriff comment away from a full bulletin board. Like you got Jalen Milrose comments going back a couple of weeks ago about the dogs didn't want it and they didn't want to play for. I mean, think about that. All these big games, you got this star quarterback. You know, they get one or two others. You know, I'm sure Dabo will say something maybe 3 weeks before the game about how he's not taking any transfers before he gets beat by a couple touchdowns. So they'll have that up there too. You know, so it'll be a whole thing. That'll be the poster for 2024. It's like the bulletin board one. Maybe we should make that for Locked On. That would be great. So.
And I feel like there's not just like a regular bulletin board, but it's going to be like one of those Target bulletin boards.
Yes.
Where it's got little pictures like a longhorn and a wildcat and a tiger.
That's the team building activity on like Wednesday. It's just a little dartboard kind of thing.
Dartboard. I feel like it's an SEC dartboard that's being created as we speak. And man, listen, Quinn Ewers, just keep quiet the rest of the way, man. That's just the best way to do it. Let your play on the field do your talking for you. Now, the Dogs, of course, finished July off with a bang, but is there an opportunity for maybe some more to come? We'll go between the hedges to discuss. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by FanDuel. Now, I love sports just as much as you do. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. And of course, sports is still going on. We've got the WNBA, we got Major League Baseball, and we've got Copa America. So there are definitely sports that are still going strong. But on the same token, the playoffs have wound down because, of course, the Stanley Cup has been given and earned by the Florida Panthers. And, of course, the NBA championship belongs to the Boston Celtics. So there's still fewer games in the sports. You know, they're just not sporting like they used to. So FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. Lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All we have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime we're in the mood. And there are some big matchups still going on in the WNBA as they get closer to their All-Star break, and some big matchups that are going on in Major League Baseball that may dictate what happens at the trade deadline. So all summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So before we get into the potential flip that may happen for Georgia, this is the first season that there will be no divisions in the SEC. We kind of alluded to that earlier, Brian. And of course, teams will no longer be required to play the same divisional opponents every season. So SEC Network's Paul Feinbaum predicted that Georgia and Texas will make the SEC championship game. So first off, does Georgia have the edge to win that game? And if so, why do you think?
I wonder how much it pains Feinbaum to talk about Texas like this and like in a positive light and having him join. He's like, damn, there's really another good program, like a big program we have to talk about. Like he's had to talk about Georgia a little bit because it's like, oh man, we have to not talk about Alabama every once in a while. So, but yeah, no, I think Georgia has the advantage in this game against Texas, just in the sense of they've been in so many more of these games over the years, right? It's just the experience factor of both Kirby and then Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers kind of have the same amount of experience at this point in time. Now, granted, Beck probably saw a few more big games and was a part of those moments, even though he wasn't necessarily playing. But Georgia's been in these atmospheres all the time. I mean, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a year over the last 5-6 years. So while it will be a big game and it'll be huge, and Georgia going to Texas for the first time and all of that, it is going to be another Saturday afternoon or Saturday night. Hopefully they haven't announced the time for that game for the Dogs, and they're going to approach it in that way. Like, this is going to be another thing. And I think the thing too is there's a very good chance, especially if Texas finds a way to beat Michigan in week 2, that these two teams are going to be undefeated when they play each other. And it's weird because the way with the new playoff setup, like, yes, that will be a massive game. We'll have all these eyeballs. We'll draw a lot of conclusions from it and all of that. But if that's a close game, I think that's just, kind of a feather in both teams' caps. Like, it's like, okay, these are two of the best teams for sure. They're going to be 2-12. So the outcome may not have a huge impact on what happens at the end of the season.
Yeah.
I don't think it has a big impact on as far as the college ball playoff, to your point, BG, but I definitely think it has implications. There are implications as far as the Heisman goes, right? Because it can be potentially be one of those games. You're talking about October 19th, right? Kind of midway through the season, so to speak. So a lot of people are going to start thinking about, okay, who I'm going to vote for as far as that Heisman Trophy goes, because we know that, like, if Carson Beck performs the way we think he's going to perform this year, like, the dude has a chance to be the number 1 overall pick, right? That is not, I'm not blowing his projections up, right? So that's kind of what everybody is kind of thinking, as long as he performs and does his part. So I feel like, and then with that being said, I really feel like this Georgia definitely has the advantage in this game, because I can't buy Texas. I'm not even buying Quinn Ewers, to be honest with you. Like, I know I mentioned earlier about him being a projected top 10 pick, but I haven't seen that quite yet. So I'm still kind of waiting to see that. So maybe this is the game for him to say, you know what? Hey, I'm here too, and I should be the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah. These they should do the first playoff seeding thing right after this game. I know it's usually kind of, what is it, like the first or second, maybe third week in October. I don't know how early they're going to do it this year again with the 12, because there's going to be even more conversation and more teams to talk about. But really, Georgia,
if they do that, that'd be smart. Amazing.
They should end the game and be like, all right, these are the immediate rankings, because they'll have the whole thing done for the day. I mean, USC might be playing Rutgers or something, or whatever they're doing at night on Saturday that night. So you might have somebody like that that's in the mix, if you will. But that would be great if they were just like, all right, here we go. And then it's like, and they just unveil it right after that as part of the post game thing. And it will have a big impact in that regard too. So
and I think too, when you look at that particular game, I would lean towards Georgia, but whether or not Georgia does like a full-on outright, we want to go after this, may also be dictated by who needs it most, right? Because all of those key matchups, especially the more difficult ones that Georgia has, maybe they have a stumble. We hope not, but maybe they have a stumble, and that championship game is their road into that top 12, right? But could be the same for Texas as well. So I think a lot of intrigue in what happens around that game. Yes, I think we do defer to Georgia and do believe that Georgia's going to win it. But I also think that how that game plays out could be dictated by what happens in the weeks to come, and also could be dictated by what happens as far as, I think for me, as far as what happens, like you said, on October 19th. That could also kind of dictate a lot of what we see in this game and how we think this game is going to play out. Now, Paul Feinbaum also predicted that Alabama would make the college football playoff, despite the fact that he didn't predict they'll make that championship game. Jarvis, what do you see as the path for that to happen?
Wow. This is going to be interesting, because, this whole Alabama piece, I feel like Kalen DeBoer is doing some good things. He kind of shored up the offensive line. Not kind of. He did shore up the offensive line through the transfer portal. He got a couple of guys that were really good where they came from as far as transferring in. So he understands that, hey, I need to be solid up front in order to have any chance to do anything in this conference. And he already has the quarterback. So I feel like they'll be in that conversation. But I'm interested to see how they show against Georgia. That is so crazy to say, right? I'm interested to see how Alabama puts up a good fight against the Bulldogs. Who would have thought they'd be saying that in 2024, right? Before last year. So I think that those matchups matter, and I feel like we'll be able to see, can he bring that high power offense that he had last year with Michael Penix into the SEC? does that work for him? Can he make that work for him? And I feel like, can Jalen Milroe run that type of offense? Because we know that the play callers didn't really trust him too much last year. So we'll see if he can instill some of that confidence in him. And I think they'll have a good showing. And to be honest with you, if they only lose 2 games, you got to think that Alabama's going to be in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy how big that game against Georgia is going to be for them at home. It'll be a night game. It'll be all that stuff. I agree with Feinbaum, though. I think Bama's going to be one of these 12 playoff teams. I think people are so ready to write them off, and it's like, Kalen DeBoer is a really damn good football coach. No, is he Nick Saban? No, nobody in the world is Nick Saban. So to try to compare and do all that, but I think their offense could be even better. Like, I mean, you just talk about another year with Jalen Milroe, trying to open it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Running a different set, running a different scheme. And then all the defenses in the league are going to have to adjust to that too, because they had Milroe on tape what they had last year, and a lot of people couldn't stop him then. So imagine if he adds another layer to his game. And you take a glance at Alabama's schedule too, right? And they're at Tennessee and a couple of traditional matchups, of course, the Georgia game. But I think their season's going to probably come down to that second to last week when they go to Oklahoma, which will be the first time that they'll go there, unless it was like 1947 or something. So forgive me if I'm, I missed that one on that matchup. That classic showdown between the Tide and the Sooners like 80 years ago or something. But it's really interesting to go into this year not really sure what to expect from Bama, right? It's just been so long. I think the big question mark for them will be defense. Losing Caleb Downs, and what level are they going to be? One of the best in the league? Are they going to be one of the best in the SEC? Or are they going to be kind of more in the middle of the pack, maybe, when it comes to SEC, as far as on the defensive side? Because I think offensively, they'll be right there with Georgia and Texas and some of those ones right at the top.
Yeah, and I think what makes this intriguing is the thing that you just said, Brian, which is whether or not they're going to be at the top of the SEC or middle of the pack, because that's one good thing about to me, that's one good thing about not having the divisions. Like, you'll finally really get to see all of the teams be in position or in contention to get down to that final weekend for a championship game. Now, we talked about the fact that Georgia added one more recruit, and there's one guy that they're still hoping they can add in July. We'll talk about that again, kind of give you guys a recruiting update in Next Up. Locked On Sports Today is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel that's programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the noise. Locked On Sports Today also brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, guys, Georgia wrapped up the month of June. We know that they were gangbusters. We talked about it all throughout the month of June, but there was one more commit that was made after our show last week, wide receiver out of Armwood High for 2025, Tyler Williams. What, Jarvis, will he bring to the Dogs wide receiver room?
An explosive wide receiver, a guy who can go up and get the football, a guy who can add to special teams. I'll never forget listening to Ladd McConkey talking about how important special teams is and how Kirby Smart just drills that into them, and it just makes them understand the importance of it, right? Because, like, whether or not you are a top 5 pick receiver or a 6th or 7th rounder, like, it's going to matter if you're able to play special teams in your first year, because most of the guys, they're going to have to add some value in that area. So this guy, he's a go up and get it type guy. You just see the explosiveness, right? When on tape, this dude, I was like, oh yeah, I understand. About 190, yeah, like, yep, that's
Yep.
I mean, what you looking for, Kirby? I understand, Kirby. I got you. Yeah, so yeah, Tyler, he a good one. He got him a good one.
Yeah. No, it's nice to see some of those like slightly bigger guys, and they're starting to get more and more of those types. You look at like a Colby Young and a few of those. Okay, here, this bigger, like more physical wide receiver, and I could see Tyler becoming that. So, and what Jarvis had said too, special teams are so important. Get in there. He can be able to contribute right away in that sense. So just another nice piece for that room.
Yeah, and I think there's a guy that as we approach July, of course, recruiting is going to heat up again, we're sure. And we know that the Dogs could potentially take that momentum of getting guys like Tyler Williams and so many other big gets that they got in June, taking that momentum in July. So according to 24/7 Sports, Benjamin Wolk, Georgia is projected to land Shamari Earls, a 4-star corner who's currently committed to the South Carolina Gamecocks. Now, BG, Georgia does not currently have any DBs committed in the class of 2025. So how big would it be for them to flip Earls?
Isn't that shocking just to see like no DBs in the class? Like, what are we doing, Kirby? What's going on, man?
Hold on now.
You feeling good about the group already? He already got the transfers like picked out for who he's like, I lost this kid over here. I'm gonna get him. It's from North Carolina. There's this one from Minnesota or something. I'm gonna grab both of them. But no, it's just good in terms of trying to stagger the timeline on that, right? It's almost like that's where it gets to the point where Kirby feels like he's running a professional organization where it's like, all right, well, this guy's contract's up in this year, and then we got to stand and we got to slide in this 5-star, and he can be the second backup to, that whole thing. The other nice piece about this is that, South Carolina is one of those kind of like sneaky fun rivals for Georgia. They don't play them this year. So this may be like, all right, we're going to get this dub anyways. We're going to steal this recruit from you and get this cornerback. But it's weird to not have a DB yet in this class. And hopefully they're able to close with Shamari here.
I felt like that as well. Like it was one of those stick it to him moments. And so it's not quite Florida, but it's still a little bit of a stick it to him moment.
Well, it still feels good. It's still right. They lost some games to South Carolina over the years that probably shouldn't have lost. So, but those days are long gone, hopefully. So.
Right. Because Shane Beamer, Lord knows he needs all the wins that he can get, because this I don't know how much longer this cat is going to be around, man, because it doesn't look good for Shane. I feel like this is, you got to do something, man. Yeah. this you can't continue to do these type of things and expect to win games.
Yeah, no, if he wasn't likable, like I feel like people just like him, like just people like being around him. They do all these funny social media videos. Like I feel like if he just feels that it's like, he's a nice guy, let's give him another year. Like that's just kind of what it seems like. So
exactly. And
but as far as Earls go, though, y'all, I think that this is a good pickup. Like he's another guy, 6'2", 205 pounds, right? I think that I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of moonlights at safety too. I maybe cross trains at that star position as well, because when you watch him, you kind of see they kind of moving around a little bit. He even played a little wide receiver, and he's another guy that can give you some help on special teams as well. So I feel like Earls is, if they're able to snag him, you understand why Kirby wants him. I feel like he has some technical things that he can work on to become a better corner, if that's where he's going to stay. But like I said, he's going to, if he flips to Georgia, he's going to get all that and much more.
And one more note of pettiness before we wrap up. I saw this article and I thought it was hilarious because, again, it was just being petty, right? So obviously we talked about the fact that Oklahoma and Texas officially joined the SEC on Monday. So someone asked the current Oklahoma AD about the fact that there are coaches, or was there any coach that wasn't excited about the move? And he had a really petty response for it. He said, "Oh, those coaches, they're not here anymore." So he was kind of sticking it to Lincoln Riley, because apparently Lincoln Riley wasn't enthused about the move to the SEC. And I got to say, I just love the pettiness of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's when you think about like all of this, the pettiness that oozes through, the SEC. I just think back to the days of Steve Spurrier and just the needler he was.
Yeah.
I can't use the other word that I want to use, towards other coaches, and then Lane Kiffin just being a big folly when it comes to these press conferences, and as far as just saying whatever, so it's just interesting to see how the AD now, I'm saying, throwing a little shade towards the former coach. So yeah, this is why I really I love college football. Like just the pettiness, it's just there, and it can be from something that happened 25, 30 years ago. You know what I'm saying? And people still hold on to it. It's great. I feel like
Joe Castiglione was just waiting for this moment to say I said, because like you said, Riley looked like he was going to be a lifer after he took over from Bob Stoops. And then all of a sudden, they lose 2 games in like each of the first 5 seasons. Oklahoma lost just 2 games in each of Riley's first 5 seasons. But then, of course, he decided to part ways and move on to USC. And yeah, that wasn't the way that happened. That wasn't looked on very favorably. So I just feel like, the AD was like, as soon as we get over on the other side and somebody asks us about how enthusiastic we were or others were Texas was to get over to the SEC. Oh yeah, shots fired.
Yeah, it feels like we're in that silly season too for the next couple of weeks. We got all media days coming up. Like this will be the first of many of these, and now we've got with the conference realignment, people catching strays that don't even need to be catch. Because now you have this whole it's like a Sharks and Jets thing where you've got 2. It's the Big Ten and the SEC and all the other ones. That, they kind of gone by the wayside. It's like okay. All right. And so I'm interested to see what those comments are like. And the other thing that's like a wrinkle with all this, it's like we talked about Texas so much. You mentioned the Oklahoma AD. Oklahoma's the big wild card with all of this, right? Because they were the team that had it together for a very long time when Texas didn't. And they've just been going through a rebuilding thing the last handful of years. And I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team or anything this season, but Oklahoma's still Oklahoma. They're going to get it going at some point, whether that's going to be in 2024 or not. I'm not sure, but they're going to upset 1 or 2 people and go, oh yeah, they're still Oklahoma. They're still popping in 3, 4, 5 stars themselves and going to be able to do something there. So.
Indeed. Well, just like my guy said, we can't wait to bring you more of the Petty as we get through the month of July. We appreciate you for stopping by the Atlanta Football Party. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, we're free and available wherever you download your podcasts. We'll see you soon.